Water, water everywhere, but nary a drop that's fit to drink, to paraphrase Samuel Taylor Coleridge's rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Water, we can't live without it. This is Professor Paul Connett from the US, and he says what we have in our water, we shouldn't be drinking.
No, we should never use the public water supply to deliver medicine, because once you put
When you talk about medicine, we're talking about
fluoride.
Fluoride.
Any substance that is used to treat a disease, in this case tooth decay, is a medicine by definition. We shouldn't use the water supply to deliver medicine because we can't control the dose, we can't control who gets it, it goes to everyone, and you're violating the individual's right to informed consent to medication. So it was a bad idea when it was started over 60 years ago, and unfortunately, countries like New Zealand that went along with this American practice have not done the health studies which would have checked if any harm has been caused.
So the idea of putting fluoride into our public drinking water was that it helped reduce tooth decay.
Yeah, and yet, but they've never demonstrated that any process in the body needs fluoride, and even now they admit that fluoride, the predominant action, is topical on the surface of the teeth. Once they admitted that, that should have been the end of fluoridation, because if it works topically, you've got fluoridated toothpaste, which is universally available. Brush it on your teeth, don't expose every tissue in the body, and don't force it on people that don't want it.
Well, what would you say? I went along to your public meeting, the first public meeting in Palmerston North, attracted a good crowd, where you explained the evils of fluoride here. Now, I grew up, you mentioned in your study, Hastings, Napier, where it was all kind of introduced to the country. I grew up in Hastings, so I'm a fluoride kid.
Yeah.
I'm all right, Jack. What's the deal?
Well, first of all, you're a very unusual person, because the vast majority of people in the world do not grow up drinking fluoridated water. 97% of Europe does not drink fluoridated water. But the problem is, because we haven't done the studies, you have no idea whether the arthritis that's increasing in New Zealand or the hypothyroidism that's increasing in New Zealand is caused by fluoride. You're not doing the studies. Meanwhile, we have 36 studies from around the world, mainly in China, which shows a lowering of IQ associated with fairly modest exposures to fluoride. Now, you're going to tell me you're brilliant. So obviously,
no, I was going to say, well, that explains it.
No, you don't know how more brilliant you would have been had you not been exposed to fluoride. But the trouble is, they're not doing the studies here in New Zealand.
Now, Palmerston North does have fluoride in its water supply, hence the reason you were here. Now, who invited you to Palmerston North to talk about the issue?
I was invited by FAN New Zealand to come. I came here New Zealand, Fluoride Action Network New Zealand.
Right.
They invited me 2 years ago. We had a very successful tour that ended up with 2 communities stopping fluoridation, including New Plymouth. And now there are various tribunals and referenda going on in New Zealand, so they decided to have me back to talk to more communities.
So there are communities that have decided, no, we don't want fluoride, and they've taken it out.
That's right. Hundreds of communities, over 100, have stopped fluoridation since 2010. Communities in Canada, communities in the United States, some in Australia, now that they've lifted mandatory fluoridation in Queensland, and a couple in New Zealand.
Turn the fluoridation off, just like that.
That's right. It's one of the only health issues that I can think of which can be ended just simply by turning off a tap. All you need is a strong wrist, if you have the political will. But to get the political will, we need masses of people informed and organized, and that's what we started last night.
So what's the difficulty with someone saying, well, okay, we buy your argument, we should turn it off. So why isn't it happening all over the place?
I think it's bureaucratic inertia. I do not think that the health agencies that have been saying how wonderful this is for over 50 years here and other countries have what it takes to admit that they were wrong. I think they fear a loss of public credibility, a loss of the public's trust, and then you get into the question of whether their major concern is not defending other public health policies. Maybe they're defending fluoridation by proxy in order to, defending fluoridation because they'd rather not have a head-on defense of these other public health policies. But that's sheer conjecture. What I know is what I believe is that this is a major mistake, and it's up to the health agencies either to present somebody to debate me in public, which they're refusing to do, or at least respond in writing to this book. I mean, we wrote this book with 2 other authors, and I spoke to the Ministry of Health in New Zealand, in Wellington, last time I came, April 2011, and 20 people from the agency heard me. And I said, look, if you've got a scientific response to this book, let's see it, put it in writing. I haven't seen anything in 2 years from this ministry. And meanwhile, we still have the district health boards going out to communities and telling them everything's honky-dory.
So what is wrong with fluoride? What is fluoride?
It's a very toxic substance. You know, the first people that opposed fluoridation in the United States were biochemists who'd used fluoride to poison enzymes in their experiments. They said, including Nobel Prize winners in enzyme chemistry, you don't want fluoride anywhere near your body. And now that we know that the slight benefit is from topical applications, use fluoridated toothpaste. And it's up to the people that think this is a good idea to explain why it is that the countries that don't fluoridate their water, their teeth are just as good, if not better, than those that do. That's World Health Organization figures.
So there's no distinctive advantage to having fluoride as to not having fluoride?
Absolutely.
So you'd think that a council, it must cost something to put this into the water supply. In these days of cost cutting and all that, it would be only too eager to grasp upon an opportunity to reduce some costs, perhaps.
So I would use this money that they're frittering away on fluoridation chemicals and promotion activities, put that money into giving free toothbrushes and free toothpaste to families of low income, put it into education to fight this enormous sugar consumption that we've got into, and put the 2 battles together. Fight tooth decay, fight obesity. And there should be a lot of public money to fight obesity. By putting these 2 together, i.e. less sugar, more toothbrushing, we would reduce costs to the health institutes in this country by an enormous amount, a very good investment.
You're saying too that fluoride, we don't know because no one has done the studies, which is unusual considering it's all part of our daily life, really, that this could have long-term and expensive repercussions on the public health system anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, if you take one simple thing that people do acknowledge, fluoride accumulates in the bones. 50% of the fluoride that we're taking in each day concentrates in our bones, and over a lifetime could give us, first of all, symptoms which look just like arthritis, stiffness of joints, pains in the joints, and with more exposure, it makes the bones more brittle. So there is a concern about increased hip fractures. So over the long term, what damage are we doing to our bones? And one of the things by this, as I said, the science of investigating this in New Zealand and other fluoridating countries is very poor. One of the things they haven't done is to trace the levels of fluoride in the bones of people as a function of whether they've been drinking fluoridated water for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. We're flying blind. We do not know the exposure of our people. We're just hoping that this policy, everything will work out in our favor. And I don't think that we have the right to expect it will work out in our favor, knowing that we are putting fluoride into water at 200 times the level in mother's milk. Now, who knows more about what the baby needs, Mother Nature or a bunch of dentists from Chicago who started this?
So, for people who have bought into your message and bought into the anti-fluoride, what is their next step if they want fluoride removed from the city's water supply?
I think they should bring this issue up with their councillors and give them as much information as they can, get themselves informed. There's our book, their web pages, the fluoridealert.org is a web page with a lot of information. They can also watch a videotape. It's only 28 minutes long with 15 scientists explaining. I'm not just the only scientist in the world that wants this to stop. And I think they should also ask a question. Is it the role of civil servants in our ministry and in our district health boards to be acting as propagandists for one side of the debate? Isn't their role as public servants to be presenting the most objective, balanced information to decision makers? And I think decision makers in particular in this country should be aggrieved that they're only hearing one side of this issue, and the other side they're only hearing from citizens who are getting themselves informed from elsewhere.
It's local body election year this year, and I understand there's at least one council that's included the fluoride issue as part of a referendum, citizens' referendum, which they're tacking on to the local body elections later in the year.
Yes, that's right, Hastings.
Oh.
Hastings is interesting because it was the first town to fluoridate in New Zealand. It was part of a study, and I believe that the evidence strongly shows that that study was fraudulent. So it would be wonderful if after a referendum Hastings is forced to take it out. But I think that's the way to go. I would prefer to see democratic mistakes than bureaucratic mistakes. And I think that the fluoridation is a bureaucratic mistake.
So, here's to the removal of bureaucratic mistakes and the removal of fluoride in our drinking water.